Hey everybody, Dave from Blue Bears Games here again. Today I will be opening up the Magic the Gathering 2019 Commander Primal Genesis deck. Today's going to be a little different. Today I'm actually going to tell you guys the story of how I first started playing Magic. So, my story actually begins back in 1993 or 94. Can't remember the exact date. No, I'm sorry, I remember the date. I don't remember the year. It was either 93 or 94. It was around my birthday, which is in March. So it was right after the release of Beta, the March that came after that. That's when I started playing Magic. Back in those days, I had a couple of friends I hung out with. There was a group of 4 of us. It was myself, my friend also named Dave, Eric, and Jason. We would do just about everything together. One of the main things we did was we went to this local comic book store. The name was Steve's Comic Relief. It was in a place in Delran, New Jersey. Later on in my life, I would come to actually run that store, and I'll get into that story a little later. But, so back in those days, 93-ish, I remember right around my birthday, either on the actual birthday date or sometime close to it, my friend Dave came to my house, and he had this box in his hands, and it was a deck of cards. So I remember him telling me specifically that basically what it was we were playing D&D back then. We were sitting there reading comic books. We were doing all kind of stuff, you know, the nerdy stuff, what little kids do. And he told me, look, I got this deck of cards from the comic store. I said, okay, what is it? And he told me, he was like, it's like playing Dungeons and Dragons, but on cards. And I said, really? So I said, let's give it a try. He hands me this rule book. The rule book looked like stereo instructions. It was kind of crazy. It sounded a little convoluted. Everything seemed a little off, but it was a brand new game. They just came out with it. And I was like, okay. So we sat there and we read the rules book. Maybe about an hour later, we were like, okay, let's see if we can give this a try. But he only bought one starter deck. And one starter deck back in those days isn't really going to do anything. Are you guys seeing anything weird here on these cards? Alright, let me see something here. Anyway, so back then we had the one starter deck. That starter deck had nothing really to speak of as far as like what you guys would realize today. Starter decks back then, they only had in it like 3 rares, which at that time when we first started playing, we didn't really know a whole lot about. We just wanted to learn how to play the game. So we're sitting there and we're playing. Or actually, we read the rules book, and we were like, okay, now we need to make a deck. Let me tell you, one starter deck to split between 2 people. I don't know how much you guys know about what starter decks were like back then, but they had like 12 lands total, maybe 15. So making a single deck was hard enough off of a starter deck. Making 2 was really, really impossible. So we split everything up, and I don't remember the rares in the packs or in the starter deck. I do remember, however, at the time we thought that the fairest way to split it up was the starter deck came with 1 fireball and 1 stream of life. So we made decks based upon that. So 1 deck had red, 1 had green. And we made 2 decks out of that. And the land situation was horrible. We eventually, at some point, found somebody who had a whole bunch of land we were able to do it with, but we still didn't have a whole lot of cards. So deck construction back then was kind of thrown out the window. I don't remember back in those days what the rule was. I know today it's a minimum 60 cards and all that, but I don't remember back then if it was 60 or not. So our decks were literally like 30 cards at most each. We had 3-color deck and a 2-color deck because we only had that 1 starter. But I remember we sat there, we learned the rules, we put the decks together, and we played for quite a little bit. I mean, we must have played for hours that day, and I remember waking up the next day going, wow, that was such a fun thing to do, that I spent the whole entire next 4 or 5 days calling all of my, at the time there was no such thing as a local card or game store. We had comic book shops, we had toy stores, we had basically anything but a card store, except for sports cards. So I remember pulling out the old yellow pages. Now remember, this was before internet was really, really a thing. So I pulled out the yellow pages and I called everywhere. I called the Toys R Us, which did exist back then. I called there was a sports cards place. I even ended up calling a place at what was at the time called the Mart. And it had a whole bunch of stores that sold different things. And I remember there was a guy there that sold little, little like dolls and little toys, like, back in the day, He-Man and Thundercat toys. I called him, and nobody had this stuff. It was just impossible to find because I wanted my own cards. I mean, let's just face it, you want your own cards when you play Magic. So I remember finally, I left my name and number with everybody. I had them all call me when they got some stuff in, and I remember one day I finally got the call. This was probably like a week later. I got the call. It was the store in the Mart, and he had gotten in, I think it was a couple of booster packs. Alright. Now, booster packs back then, there was only one set. It was beta. So that meant that I can only open up, I think he said he had like 3 packs left. And I asked him to save them for me, and I opened them up. I do remember 2 of my rares, a couple of my commons and uncommons out of them. I actually still own a few of them to this day, 25 years later. Alright? So the first pack I opened, and this is what shaped my future Magic history. Alright? First pack I opened, Pirate Ship. I remember going, wow, 1 damage every turn. That's got to be a winner. The next pack is really where it shaped up, because the next pack, the rare, was a Vesuvian Doppelganger. In that pack, I also believe my common or uncommon was a clone and a counterspell. And that's the reason why I have, to this day, played blue. Not exclusively, but, in the majority, I always played blue. I learned to play control, and at the time, it was clone. So, I remember putting the deck together, and at the time, my friends hated it. So, but that's my little story from 1993 or 94, again, can't remember the year, of how I started playing Magic, and why I play how I play, and what colors I tend to lean towards. To this day, I thank my friend Dave wholeheartedly. He showed me something that changed my life forever, and here we are, 25 years plus later. I still do it. I did, however, end up purchasing all of his cards about a couple years ago. Had some cool stuff in it. If I'm not mistaken, it had a play set of Lotus Petals, which, not a very common card to find these days, but they were in pristine condition, and to this day, I still use them. So, again, that's my little story of how I began playing the game of Magic. As far as this deck here, so my hope when I open up one of these, sadly, is I'm hoping that I get to open up one of those really cool, really rare versions that ends up being double printed. I haven't really had the luck. This is the second one I've opened of the 4 that I bought. And it looks like these are just regular old, cards. But the deck doesn't look horrible. Not sure. I actually put aside all of my eggs that I have in my collection just to see if, I can get something going with this. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this, but I'll take a look at it. That's a good one. I like this card, actually. It's one of the, I wish that they would do the full cycle of these. I really do like the Frozen Verge. There's another one, actually, now that I think about it. There's another version of a green-white, I think uncommon dual land that I wish that they would do, the actual set of, which is what it's in your graveyard your, I think, islands or your forest tap for one or the other. I can't remember which way it goes, but it's a cool design. It's a cool concept. I wish they would have like did the full like 4 set for that, but or 5 set the rotation. They didn't, but you know, maybe one day, maybe we'll see it. All right, so that's the entire deck. Sadly, no misprints, no double prints, none of that. But here you are, and that is the Primal Genesis 2019 Commander deck from Wizards of the Coast. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video, and next time I'll open up another Commander deck. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.